Dave Birkett here, along with Jeff Seidel at Lincoln Financial Field. And Jeff, we have an undefeated football team on our hands.
It's just like we predicted.
2-0-1, right? They did it again. Beat the Philadelphia Eagles today 27-24. Another game where, let's be honest, I mean, it wasn't the prettiest of performances all the time. They didn't take advantage of all the opportunities the Eagles gave them, but they did enough to win in the end.
They made mistakes. First of all, the Eagles are beat up. They're missing their two best wide receivers. But it was the Eagles making the mistakes, not the Lions. Even though the Lions did not play well, even though they had plays out there that they didn't complete that could have clinched it earlier, even though they got a field goal blocked, they held on to win. And I'm starting to think that this is something. What that means, I don't know. But they've done it. They're, as you said, they're undefeated.
Yeah.
And it's something we haven't really seen that much very often.
In the locker room after the game, talking to a bunch of guys, I mean, you can sort of sense some of the confidence building. And Marvin Jones, I wrote this in the story I just filed, is, he talked about the 2016 season where the Lions, they didn't play pretty all the time, but they had those 8 fourth-quarter comebacks. And this wasn't a comeback, technically. I mean, this wasn't a fourth-quarter comeback. But you think about what's happened the first 3 weeks, right? Big fourth-quarter lead. They blow it against the Cardinals, but they have enough resolve to come back and tie the game in overtime after giving up a field goal on the opening drive. Last week, don't play good for 3 quarters, and then they score a late touchdown to win it. And then today, sort of the same thing where, there's a couple fumbles early, they get field goals off them, they're leading 20-10, but it always felt like this tenuous sort of lead. The Eagles come out and score in the third quarter. What do the Lions do? They go back and answer. The Eagles block a field goal. What do the Lions do? They get a big fourth down stop. So they're making the plays they need to win.
They're making the plays, but it's no one single person. Yeah. It's Jared Davis punching the ball out. It's Marvin Jones
making a great catch
and crawling across the end zone like sniper style. So it's an awful lot of guys making plays. Stafford is not really playing that well, I don't think. I mean, he could play a lot better. And the entire team can play a lot better, which is the wild thing to me. They still have way more upside than what they're showing.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think Stafford has done some really good things the first 3 weeks. He missed the throw out there today to Marvin Jones. There was a third down throw Stafford was rolling out. He kind of skipped it to him a little bit. He was saved by a couple really nice catches by his receivers, but he was under a lot of pressure. But yeah, I think you're right. Look, we haven't seen much out of this running game yet. Take out the reverse to McKissick, and they basically averaged a little over a yard a carry today. I mean, the offensive line wasn't great, I don't think. And defensively, Rashawn Melvin, he said he got a finger on that ball at the end.
I didn't know if I should call it a drop
I thought it was at first glance, but talking to him in the locker room, he said he grazed the ball. So, I think same thing. They lose Darius Slay to a little injury. There's some other things where we're not getting, we're not seeing enough pressure out of this defensive line. So the defense, you're right, there's still a lot of room for improvement in a lot of areas.
But the offensive line, they have not given up a sack in
last 2 weeks. Yeah.
Stafford is being smart a little bit. Like he completed a pass to Jones where he knew they were coming and he was trying to buy time, threw it up. It's fascinating. They're using the word resilient.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sums up this.
I think they stole it from my story last week. They stole it from my game story last week.
Well, they're reading way too much.
Yeah.
Get back in the playbook.
Well, maybe they're believing their press clippings because they are. You're starting to sense a little confidence about this team. And now I guess, look, next week comes the real test, right? I mean, a beat-up Chargers team last week, a beat-up Eagles team this week, and the Lions weren't completely healthy. No Deshaun Hand. They lose Mike Daniels. They lose Darius Slay today. But Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, that's the real deal coming into Ford Field next week. Are they going to get unmasked? Are we going to find out who the Lions really are?
But think of the difference of what could have been versus what is. If they lost those first 3 games, and you go into that Kansas City game and lose,
season's over.
Season's over.
It's probably over before if you lose. So if you start 0-3.
This is a game they don't have to win because they haven't lost yet. And it's a different thing, a different vibe going into that game, I think.
Well, look, it's going to be really tough for the Lions next week, especially if Darius Slay doesn't play. I mean, it's going to be really tough regardless. Pat Mahomes is playing at the highest level he can. Slay, he was limping after the game, saw him walking out, tried to talk to him. He didn't want to say much. He just said, we'll see when I asked him if he's going to play next week. He said he was okay, but what does that mean? Look, he had a limp as he left the game. He didn't return. It's a hamstring for a cornerback. There's still 12 games left after next week. So who knows? It's really early. But I would just say signs don't point to him playing. And against Patrick Mahomes and against that Chiefs offense, you need those guys on the field. Mike Daniels, foot injury. He was in a walking boot after the game. So the Lions have some injuries on that side of the ball, and that's a really good Chiefs team. I asked if they're going to get unmasked. I don't know. I mean, look, I certainly don't expect them to win, but I don't know that anybody expected them to win, and I don't know that right now you're looking at this as being an NFC championship contender. But again, you start stacking a couple of these together,
and you can't lose. You can't win the Super Bowl in September, but
that's right.
They haven't lost the season.
They haven't lost a season. In fact, they're 2-0-1.
Your undefeated Lions.
I was going to say undefeated, second place in the NFC North because the Packers are 3-0. But that's a showdown that's coming not too far down the road as well. After the bye week, Monday night, Lambeau Field. But the Lions, an undefeated team in the NFL. Best record since 2011 for this team. Best start since 2011 for this team. We'll see if they can continue it next week. For Jeff Seidel, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.